Value is the buzzword of the season, and that is no truer for associations than it is for real estate companies. Today, I spoke with Illinois Realtors CEO Jeff Baker and Illinois Realtors President, 2025 President Tommy Choi. He is also a team leader with Weinberg Choi with Keller Williams One Chicago, and runs a super successful team. And we talked all about value as a real estate professional, value as association, and what is necessary for the future of associations as far as serving their members. So enjoy the podcast. So Jeff and Tommy, thank you so much for joining the RealTrending podcast.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we are just going to go right into it. And we're going to start with kind of a little bit of the housing market. And obviously, we've got inventory challenges, we've got interest rate challenges, we've got a new administration, and a lot is happening in the market right now. So what are you, and I guess I'll start with Jeff, because I want to talk about what you're kind of advising your members in being resilient through all different types of markets, actually.
Yeah, that's something that we have had to work on over the years through all different kinds of markets, going all the way back, for example, the Great Recession, the recovery period that came after that. So we are constantly evolving in the education space, the types of information and communications that we're putting out there to make sure that the realtor members are as prepared as possible for whatever the market conditions are. So low inventory, high demand, or vice versa. And so we constantly are evaluating the types of communication that we put out there and then urging the realtor members to stay on top of it so that they are prepared in advance for whatever comes down the pipe.
Yeah, there's a lot coming down, it looks like. So, Tommy, you're actively in the business as the president of the association. So tell me a little bit about what you're looking at and how you're preparing your business moving forward.
You know what? I follow the data, right? I always say men lie, women lie, politicians lie, numbers never lie. And there's such great resources, especially with the NAR, the Home Buyer Seller Profile Guide. If you look at that, one of my favorite things I always scroll to, two favorite data points I look at. One, if you look at how many realtors, the consumer, buyers and sellers interviewed, it's like 80% have interviewed only one agent, right? And then when you look at the repeat referral side of things, when they ask a buyer, how satisfied were you working with your realtor and would you use them again? It's like a resounding like 80% plus. But then when they interview sellers, hey, did you work with the same realtor? It's only like 16, 18%, right? So it comes down to speed to lead and staying top of mind. That's how you stay resilient, and that's, recession proof. And so for us, it's constantly, what are you doing to do that? Stay top of mind, be that one that they're going to interview, right? And make sure that we're not in that 16% that they go with a different person. And that comes down to becoming what I think is you have to be a modern real estate agent. And what that means for me is blending the offline traditional side of business development with the online digital side. You have to mesh the two, right? It's not about being one or the other, right? There's like, I always say there's like 25-year-old life gurus now that are selling $100 courses on how to go viral in real estate. You have to do both in order to really win and to really maximize and stay top of mind. Where I'm seeing realtors win and stay resilient is positioning themselves as the chief economists for their database, where they are bringing value and education, especially with how much information there is and how much bad information there is, really providing context to it. You'll win every day. It doesn't matter how high or low interest rates are, how much inventory, how little inventory, you're still going to gain that market share. And I think that's really important to stay resilient right now as an active realtor.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think that, realtors hear that constantly, but they don't always know how to really implement that. And it's all about relationships, right? That's what 100%. The whole business is. So when you think about it that way, I think it really helps that resiliency as well, because you're focusing on your database, you're focusing on the people the people you've done business with, and, you're keeping top of mind for them as well. So when the market explodes, they're all coming
You're
to
the
you.
first to harvest.
That's right.
You know, a really key stat I think every real estate agent should be focusing on is roughly they say about 16.67% is what you should be converting your database. So for every 600 people you properly market to, that equates to 100 deals. And so the delta between where you were yesterday and where you're trying to get to goal-wise, it's just how many more people do you have to meet, to your point, right? Yeah. And so that's ultimately it. And that has nothing to do with the actual houses. It's about how many relationships you can curate and cultivate.
Yeah, and Jeff is the CEO of Illinois Realtors. How are you kind of preparing, the association in general for all the changes that have happened since the settlement and everything that's going on? I know you did a lot of education for members. So moving forward, what do you see as the kind of the future of the association?
Yeah, I think just kind of dovetailing off of what we were just talking about, the future is providing as much information and tools and resources to the members as possible so that they are well suited to do exactly what we're talking about, is be positioned to capitalize on the market, whatever the market conditions are. So if it is a high demand, low supply market or vice versa, you can rely on your association going forward to have all of the educational tools, whether that is digital marketing, whether it is customer relations, whether it's database management. You can look at your association to provide you those tools and resources to improve yourself and improve your business and get yourself ready to capitalize. So yes, as you mentioned, the NAR settlement, we're now in, I think, roughly 10 months past the announcement, and we're effectively 10 months into our campaign of educating members on, what that means, how it's affecting their business. But really what it is going to be a multi-year educational effort, a multi-year effort of bringing tools and resources directly to the members. As we sit here and have this conversation today, we're at our winter conference where we're going to have 2 days straight of nothing but information on how to improve your business in a market like this, in a setting or context post-settlement. So that's the role of the association going forward. That's our future.
Yeah, and are you seeing, well, I guess, I'll take this to Tommy. Are you seeing any challenges in speaking to, buyers and sellers about the settlement? Are they asking about it? I know you've had to rework how you're approaching them and how you're doing business with them. How has it been for you and the people that work with you?
That's a great question. What I'll say is this is the first time in my last 18 years in this industry and doing this at a very high level, having a top 10 team in Chicago, where in the past, when there's real estate stuff in the headlines, consumers really didn't pay attention. Since the settlement announcement, through the end of last year, right, I personally went on about 160 listing appointments, and there was never one listing appointment where the homeowner didn't bring this up. So they're very informed. However, where I think success is achieved is asking first, well, tell me, what do you know about what's going on? Because what I found is the majority really have no clue. And they're asking something about like commissions, like they're not.
They've seen the headline.
Exactly. Yeah. They don't read behind the headline, beyond the headline, and so it's really just being the truth and being pointing out the facts. And honestly, it's they understand. They see the value we provide. It makes sense. They understand why things are the way they are and how we present our business, and things haven't really changed from the consumer side of pushing back, from my experience.
Yeah, I think, value is the big buzzword right now, yes. Right? I mean, it's about showing your value as an association, as a realtor, figuring out how you can really do that. Because I feel like in the past, agents they've handled all the problems behind the scenes because they don't want to bother their buyers and sellers about them. And now it's not about like bragging about everything you've done, but showing them here are the things that I've done to get this transaction closed. And for the association, it's getting that communication out. Yeah. And that's tough. Coming from an association background, I know how tough that is. Yeah. So what are you looking at different methods? Are you, talk to me from the association standpoint, how you're communicating the value that you're providing to your members?
Yeah, so interesting. That is, when we use that buzzword value in the association context, information and connection is really what it comes down to, because, we can talk all day about, advocacy, which is something that's really important that we do and it's hard for anybody else to replicate, education. But really what it comes down to is, organizing information and then communicating that and getting it into the members' hands. So one of the things that we have invested heavily in over the course of the last couple of years and that we see continuing to grow is our presence in digital media. That is where, if you look at almost any survey or any study, as Tommy said before, the numbers don't lie. Over 50% of millennials and Gen Z are getting all of their news or all of their information from social media. And so looking at these population groups as the next buyers, we have to meet them where they're at. And so that's what we're investing a lot in terms of how do we get through all of the noise. In the old days, it might have been email, and now we all can look at our inboxes and say, no, that's the last thing I want is another email, and I'm just not going to read it. So trying to find new innovative ways to connect with the members. I think it comes down to events like the one that we're hosting this week and the ones that we host throughout the year is making them even more impactful. We're sitting here talking about a tough market. And so as an association, I have to convince you to walk away from that business for a day to come spend it with me and the association. And so I need to make this programming as impactful as possible. I need you to walk out of a day or two of conference having learned as much as possible. So whether it's the digital media space, whether it's the events, it's putting as much resource and thought into high impact communications and getting that organized information into the hands of the members as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and getting ready for whatever the new TikTok will be.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
The interesting thing is that word value, that is the golden thread that is sewn through not just as a real estate agent to consumer, but association to the realtor, right? Associations are being challenged by realtor members on what the value that they present, and consumers are challenging realtors every day on what our value is in a transaction. So it's a very unique space we're in. I think a very exciting time where everyone's on the same page and we're just trying to communicate and demonstrate that as best as we can.
Yeah. It really is an interesting time in the industry because you've got that double whammy of the lawsuits plus the market. And, looking at Logan's forecast, which he'll be speaking here, he's slightly optimistic that it will definitely be a better market this coming year. So that's the good news. Yeah. So Tommy, you are the 100th president of Illinois Realtors and a history-making leader. So tell me a little bit about some of the kind of initiatives that you're planning to bring to the Realtor Association to help the members.
That's such a great question. It's something that leading up to this and even today, people always ask what do you want to do? And this might be unpopular opinion, but I think that having themes and ideas, it's either an indicator of a lot of ego or a weak association. For us, I feel that Illinois Realtors is such a strong association. My job is to just continue to be an advocate, an ambassador for it, and amplify the things that we're doing well. Now, what's different and what I bring that's different is my lived experience, right? I have a different connection with members that maybe didn't have the connection past presidents, right? And that's not a knock to past presidents. It's just where does that connection get made? And then how does that story of value get told? So, I always say, success lives on the other side of ego. And, for me, having a theme and tchotchkes to give out, that really doesn't measure anything. It's just being able to continue to amplify all the great work that we're doing at, a local level and continuing that torch gets passed to the next leaders beyond.
Yeah, that's great for us writers. We like themes because that helps us with our with designing magazines and things like that. But I totally understand. And so what are the initiatives that you're really focusing on? Is there any specific advocacy? I know that you recently we're working on defeating a transfer tax that you were able to do.
Yes.
So,
And so we have a very extensive local governmental affairs operation, just speaking specifically to the transfer tax proposal that was in Chicago earlier in or last year. And so we will continue to invest heavily in our local governmental affairs operations. On the advocacy side of things, we will continue to fight ideas that either promote or proliferate discrimination. Crime-free housing is something that we are working on every single day at the local level to put an end to those types of discrimination. As Tommy mentioned, we may not have specific single year themes, but the way Illinois Realtors operates and the way that our leadership has really kind of rallied around is that we have initiatives that are multi-year efforts. And so each incoming president kind of picks up that torch and tries to champion what we're working on. One of those that we've been working on now for several years is zoning reform. And so we have made a lot of progress with the Illinois Governor's Office, and we actually will see legislation introduced in this spring General Assembly session that addresses zoning reform. We've made a lot of progress with the governor's office and with state legislators in talking about how do we address inventory in a smart but also expedient way. We all know that we can't snap our fingers and just build a house. So we do have a lot of economic growth throughout Illinois. Doesn't get written about all too often, but it is there. And so we are trying to look at ways to incentivize rethinking the starter home in Illinois and making Illinois a leader in the country on what starter homes really look like and basing it around those economic growth centers throughout the state. And so, like I said, we've worked with a lot of legislators. We'll see legislation to that effect this coming spring. And Tommy really is just our champion and picked up that torch, like I said, to help move that initiative forward.
Yeah, that leadership consistency is really very
Right.
key.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add?
No, I mean, it's, you know what, I always say fancy fails and simple scales. And we do simple, the basics at a very high level. And so, it's like I'm getting, handed not the same playbook, right? It's always evolving, but, I'm a different type of athlete on the field. So I might be able to run different plays better, whereas the next president will do something different. So I think that's the great thing about this team approach and having that synergy.
So in your business, you've been uber successful. So let's talk a little bit about that. What, share with my audience, which is really agents, team leaders, brokers, real estate leaders. What, in your opinion, is that secret sauce? What's the thing that really kind of catapulted your business?
Yeah, I mean, it's consistency. It's really just doing the boring things at a consistent level. I always say things don't get easier. And a lot of the times I hear, once, summer ends and kids are back in school, I'll have more time and I can do this. Or, once the interest rates drop, it'll be easier to do this. We'll get more inventory. No, something difficult will come, right? I think ultimately consistency is doing the hard things better. And over time, when you can continue to do time on task, you see those results. And like I said, it all comes down to relationship building, right? Being that chief economist, and right now more than ever, it's so important, especially in my opinion, to be positioning yourself and leveraging content marketing, right? All the data information that's out there, all the great information that's on HousingWire. You like how I did that?
I like how you did that.
and being able to transfer that knowledge to consumers. And you only do that by getting face-to-face, getting voice-to-voice and screen-to-screen. And so that's how we're able to replicate our success year over year. And there's no yo-yo effect to it because we control where our destiny is.
Yeah. And are you, we're looking at HousingWire, we're looking at doing a huge commission compression study, hopefully maybe not compression. Yeah. But brokers, team leaders are all dealing with that. Team leaders less so because they tend to generate leads. So because of that, they're more profitable than brokerages. Yeah. Where do you see the most opportunity in the business in the coming year?
That's a great question. Once again, as a data nerd, I'll speak to the Midwest, right? Last year, 55% of home buyers in the Midwest, right, were under the age of 36. So millennials, that's not anything new, right? People are listening like, duh, right? But it's so important, right? And 36 is what, I'm sure some old white guy in Washington, D.C. Coined as prime household age. In the next 2 years, we're going to see the largest population of 36-year-olds. Okay, that is our opportunity. And how you understand and reverse engineer how these millennials, believe it or not, I'm the oldest millennial. I'm 43. I can still, tag that on. My kids, roll their eyes at me when I say that. But you have to reverse engineer and study that audience, right? Those 36-year-olds today that are going to be the biggest home buying pool in 2 years, when they're hungry, they push a button on their phone and food shows up at their door. When they need to get somewhere, they push a button on the phone and Uber shows up. And if it takes longer than 3 minutes, they cancel to get a faster one. So right now, if you as an advisor, real estate agent, aren't putting yourself out there and adapting to how that big buyer pool and seller pool have grown up, you're going to lose. Also, if sellers don't, because it's a low inventory market, they just get lazy and they think, oh, I'll just put it on the market and just call for an offer deadline. If their home doesn't look like the millennial buyer's Pinterest board, they're not going to give you top dollar. They don't want to do work, not because they don't know how to do it, because once again, when they're hungry, they hit a button, 15 minutes later, their sandwich shows up at the door. They want to be able to move in and unpack and enjoy. If you're not paying attention to that group that's only continuing to grow, you're going to be left behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's something that Tommy mentioned I think is a really important takeaway for members, realtors going forward too, is to not be complacent with the high demand that we've kind of gotten used to seeing over the last few years. And we can complain about inventory not matching that, but in that I want it now generation, in the instant gratification generation, you are starting to see home ownership and the sentiment towards home ownership start to get chipped away. And so that's another element of the business, and another element that the industry has to focus on is reminding everybody, or perhaps even re-educating everybody on the benefits of home ownership, why housing stability via home ownership is what is best for communities and cities, schools, safe streets, economic opportunity, all of the things that come with it. And so I think that that's something that's really important for the members, for everyone within the industry to remember too going forward, is don't be complacent with this high demand that we see right now. That may not be around forever. We can already start to see the effects of other groups and other interests starting to move people away from home ownership. So we have to stay diligent on that subject as well.
Yeah.
So are either of you using any AI or generative AI in the association, the business? Tommy, you want to start?
Every single day.
Okay.
I think it's so important. I always tell agents, AI will not replace us in our role in the real estate transaction, but an agent that does use AI at a high level will replace you. And it's not just, efficiencies, but, the big L word that gets thrown around in our industry, leverage. A lot of people just think of leverage as capital or human capital, but technology is the greatest leverage. Because, ChatGPT and Canva, they don't ask for days off. There's no sick days. They're constantly working. And it's especially when you talk about potential studies of commission compression, what the name of the game moving forward, if we start to see that, it's going to be, as an agent and a business owner, how do you continue to stay and run profitable? And a lot of that's going to come down to efficiencies. And AI, I think, is one of the greatest tools that allows you just constant leverage and allow you to focus on the things that you should be.
Are you using it as back office at all, or are you doing more marketing and, client acquisition with it?
both. I mean, all the above. Right now, we're using AI to live in our database and make sure that some of the people that we're just like, when I just feel like, I don't want to make this extra call, they're touching them for us, right? Reaching out to them. We're using that as far as also, when I talked about speed to lead, having chat bots, making sure that they're getting that touch point. We're going to start looking into AI call centers right now too, because the voice side of things is scary how good that is right now, right? So once again, being able to use those efficiencies, and then back of the office, streamlining all of our processes using artificial intelligence. It's just the future.
Okay. And Jeff, what about association?
Yeah, so we're embracing it and trying to learn as much as we can about it and the different ways that we can use it. Where we've already started to incorporate it, one of the most obvious ways is through marketing and communication, and we see it similar to what Tommy just said. Is it's a force multiplier. My head count's not going to go down as a result of AI. But what that AI and those tools are going to do is make all of my other human product even better. And so content creation, marketing pieces, whether it's in the writing or in the video production side of things, we've already started to fold that in and incorporate it in. And then through some of our back office software programs and that sort of thing, there's AI built into that to make sure that everything is as efficient or error correction is as efficient as possible. So some of that is starting to get folded into the back office side. But on the front end, it's definitely an asset that everyone should be embracing, especially on communication.
Yeah, I've used it to plan trip itineraries. When we went to Paris, I plugged in everything I wanted to do and made up an itinerary for it.
And how was the trip?
Yes.
It was great. We adjusted it, but yeah, it was perfect.
That's good.
Yeah. So my final question to both of you is kind of a little bit more personal. It could be professional, but I'll start with Jeff. So your aha moment, it could be in your personal life, it could be your professional life, but something that really kind of triggered a change or, you to do something a little different.
So I think I can specifically remember early on in my in this position that I'm in now, leading the association, where it's really easy to think that this trade association focuses specifically on, what can we do for the realtor members? And that's true. We do, obviously, that is one of our number one priorities. But when you stop and think about, but why do we do that? And what is the ultimate benefit? And it's not, the policies we fight for, the educational programs, it's not to put an extra dollar in a realtor's pocket. Every single thing that we do, whether it's the education of individual realtors or advocacy and initiatives that I fight for at the state capitol, benefits everyone that lives in the state of Illinois. There's not a single person in the state of Illinois who has not benefited from the work of the realtor associations. If you rent or you're a landlord, you bought a home, you sold a home, you bought a business property, you have benefited from the work that we've done. And once you stop and realize that that is the magnitude of what these associations can do and have been doing for decades, it just brings a whole nother layer of meaning and worth to what we do every single day. And ever since, I think when I stepped into this position and I had that kind of moment of realization of how deep and far our reach is, that's what's driven me for the last several years, every single day when you wake up, to know that everyone in the state is going to benefit from the work that we do. So I think that that's just something that was really important, not just for me to realize, but all of the members as well.
Yeah, that's a great one. Tommy.
Man, I think about 2010, 11, those years in the last recession. And, at that time, I remember just being fearful and scaling back on certain things, just from a resources standpoint, just from a mental weight standpoint. And, I also saw how, other agents conducted themselves very dog eat dog. And something, when the dust settled, and in reflection, when I look back, I've learned really that, revenues made in up markets and reputations made in down markets. And that was such a great aha, and that's prepared us for all the ups and downs, the cyclical seasons of real estate, to really focus on foundationing our reputation, because we know the revenue will happen. And at the time when you see people leaving, you start to, get a little bit nervous of like, oh my gosh, am I going to be the next person? And I've just embraced that. Really, quitters make space for earners. And so I never want to see people leave, but when people see that and they start to get fearful, I say, no, this is an opportunity for you. And a lot of the times, what I learned from that is there's the two R's that I always say that really will catapult you in those times, right? And some might say we're in that right now, is risk and revenue, right? Being risk adverse and embracing, being able to take a chance, really ultimately betting on yourself, and having the resources, a revenue to invest, to double down on certain things that are going to work, but not let the market drive you away from it. And so, and for me, especially when we got into the season, we saw it again. People started to scale back on marketing. For us, we went all in on that, and we're starting to see the results from that. So, I think that understanding that, reputation is made in these markets when it gets challenging and things get tough.
Yeah, and I would add another R to that, and that's what we talked about earlier, which is relationships.
Yes.
We've done studies on brokers who grew through the Great Recession, and one of the things that all of them did was they got closer to their agents. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were able to expand during that time as well, and came out on top. So yeah, great stuff. So, well, thank you so much for joining the Real Trending podcast. It has been a pleasure having both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.